All right, great. So, J-Mac, it's great to meet you. Thank you for coming on to our Freedom Live. So,
Hmm.
tell us now. We are supposed to talk about biohacking for this episode. So, let's talk
Yes.
about how do you got into it and how do you got started with biohacking.
Yeah. Funny enough, my actual story of how I got into biohacking. So for those who don't know, my background is for maybe the originally for the first decade, I was a professional dating coach, and I basically traveled the world working with people to help them to build social circles. That primarily was my specialty. Was how can you build a lifestyle? And if you guys have seen a previous episode that I did with a Yes, we
Yeah,
were talking about how to be able to build a really cool lifestyle. And when I first got into this, that's what I did. I focused a lot on being able to make friends, being able to network, being able to meet people that were in very powerful positions. And my background was a nightclub promoter. So after about 10 years, this is what I was primarily doing to get really, really good at it. And what my foray was into the biohacking was there was this one Christmas that I decided to go home. And I go home and I'm sitting on my laptop and I'm texting some people that were a part of my promotion list that were, I think they were in Vegas at the time. And I was saying, hey, I'm going to be taking some time off from the holidays. Please don't forget about me. And they responded back, hey, not a problem. And I just remember at the end of sending out the text message, I was incredibly exhausted. And I was so exhausted, in fact, that I close my laptop, I go lay down on my bed, and I don't really think anything of it. But what ends up happening in the process is that when I go to do that, I just literally remember the next morning I get up, I can't get out of bed. I'm feeling incredibly fatigued. I'm feeling exhausted. And what I'm feeling is something is severely wrong because at this point, it's hard for me to get out of bed and I'm in severe pain. So I go to the kitchen, try to go grab some food. I'm thinking that maybe if I eat something, it'll make me feel better. If I drink something, I'll feel better. I eat something, I drink something. I can't hold the food down. And instead of holding the food down, what I do is I end up puking the food up. And I'm like, what the hell is going on? But I still don't think anything of it. Like, you think the red flag in my brain would have been like, hey, you know what? This is probably a bad thing. Why don't we just change strategy? But I don't think it either. I go back to bed. The next morning I wake up and then the feelings essentially just progressively get worse. So I've got a metallic taste in my mouth. My back is hurting to the point where I'm in severe pain. And it's so severe that it's putting me into tears. And I can't get out of bed anymore. And I'm going, I don't know what's going on. So we end up going to the hospital. We do a MRI scan and we find out it's cancer. When we find out it's cancer, I go back home and my mother asked me, she says, I didn't raise no quitter. So you're either going to fight or you're going to punk out because mama didn't raise no punk. And I sit there on the bed and I'm sobbing. I'm sobbing because I'm thinking I'm about 24. I'm thinking that my life is over. I moved to LA to try to build this business and try to make something of my life because I met a girl. I thought she was absolutely amazing. I thought I was going to marry her. Let me go focus on building this lifestyle. And a bunch of stuff ended up happening that caused me to not marry the girl, um, do a bunch of self-sabotaging mechanisms, and all of that culminated into me getting the cancer. So I go home thinking that that's kind of what's going to occur. I'm just going to die because I know the chemo doesn't really work. I'm not really a big fan. I've heard friends that have died from it before. And as I go to bed that night, I hear a small still voice ask me, it says, if you're allowed to come back, what will you do differently? And I said that every day would be a celebration because I know I'm not supposed to be here. Nothing happens. The next day, I just get up and I'm watching a documentary about the from the film Limitless. If you guys ever seen the film with Bradley Cooper, it talks about the smart drug NZT48 and how he's a loser. And I can identify with everything the guy's saying in the story. I can identify with how
okay.
what his life is like, what he went through. And at the end of the film, I start to question. I say, hey, you know what? I wonder if there's a drug like that that exists. So I go online, do a quick Google search, and I say, does NZT48 exist? And who I find is I see Dave Asprey on 60 Minutes talking about modafinil. And I go, holy fuck, this does exist. Funny enough, I have the drug sitting right here. I was going to take it before the podcast because it's just every podcast is better with a little modafinil in your system.
Okay.
And I watched the documentary with Dave Asprey. I look at some other reviews, look at people that were taking drugs like that or other smart drugs and seeing how they were improving tremendously. And I asked them, I said, you know, if they can improve this much, this is going to help me because I've always struggled with this. I look up again, I look at Dave Asprey, and I see he's got a book called The Bulletproof Diet. And it basically talks about Cancer is linked to inflammation, cognitive issues in terms of being slow or not being able to remember words. These are all things that are cognitive issues that are controlled by diet and are controlled by inflammation and some other metabolic markers. Out of desperation and wanting to not have to go to chemo, I tried the diet because I felt like I had nothing else to lose. Within the first week or so, I notice I'm feeling a little bit better. Maybe I want to get up and I want to move around. Give it about a month, and I'm feeling a little bit more energy. By about month two, I'm getting out of bed. I'm moving around. I'm doing some very gentle movements, not working out, but I'm just kind of walking. I'm doing some very gentle yoga, not much. By about month three, all of a sudden I just get up one morning, I walk into the mirror, and I notice I've got a six pack, and I'm like, what the fuck? I walk in, don't expect this. I'm like, Mom. She's like, what? And I'm like, I'm jacked. I'm jacked, like very lean, very ripped. And I had struggled with my weight all of my life. The cognitive issues cleared up. I noticed that I was able to study for prolonged periods of time and have tremendous focus and energy. Being able to sit there and be dialed in for a podcast, whatever I was doing, it just came easy to me. It felt like there was a cloud that lifted off my brain. And I noticed that all the things that I had desired or wanted for my life, they seemed incredibly easy, and they were actually attainable now for the first time in probably at least 20 years. At that point, now I'm back. I've got abs. I'm able to move. I'm able to go do some gym work. I start working on other areas like trauma, because now I've got this newfound energy to go work on these areas that were issues. And there's one thing that stands out to me, and I can hear the quote, and the quote is, your body's a system, and the system interacts with the systems around it. And I remember thinking in my head, I wonder how that applies, not only just to the body, but I wonder if that applies to game, to self-development, that it's a system, that there's things that work in synergy. Things don't work in isolation or in single variables, but kind of like a hand. A hand, the thumb is not more important than the pinky is not more important than the index finger or the ring finger. But in combination, these fingers come together, they make a fist, which is attached to an arm, which is attached to a core, that if I throw a punch, I can put a hole in the wall. But separate, I probably would break my pinky, and it really wouldn't amount to much. And I realized that I wonder if I could apply that to social skills, I could apply that to cognition, all these other areas I want to hack. And then the other quote was, you don't have to know everything about a system in order to hack it. So I started to take a systems engineering approach to thinking about these different areas of my life that I had struggled with before. And I started to find I could hack everything, from dating to business to fitness, all by following this iterative system. You try what's supposed to work. If it doesn't work, you ignore it instead of trying it over and over and over and over. And then you try what shouldn't work. That's what got
Yeah,
me.
that's great.
It was a long-winded answer, but that's what got me to biohacking.
Yeah, that's great. So, like, what was the drug you're talking about?
Say that again. I'm sorry.
Yeah, what was the that smart drug you talk about that?
Yeah.
From
So the
the
smart drug was called modafinil. Modafinil. Modafinil.
So, like, what would you say is like kind of the effects of that drug that kind of helped you?
Yeah, so
Uh,
the effects of the drug are, it enhances executive function. So I don't know if you've ever heard of, I think it's Paul D. McLean, who has what's called the triune brain theory. So there's three brains. You've got the reptilian brain, the mammalian brain, then you've got the prefrontal cortex, which is the last evolved brain. So we call
yeah.
the prefrontal cortex, the part up here, we call that the human brain. So imagine that that's the you that makes you you. That is the Ayesh. That's the parent of the other two brains that goes, hey, you know what? Let's not do what's on our impulse. How about instead
Okay.
we don't masturbate, we go do self-development? How about we don't lay on the couch, we go read? It's the parent that reins in the desires of the other two. And what it
Okay.
does, it enhances executive function. So in a business, when you're trying to formulate a business plan, you have to have what? A step-by-step formulaic laid out plan. It allows you to plan. It helps with foreplanning. So if you're playing a game like chess and you have to be able to think 7 or 8 moves ahead, this drug helps you to be able to formulate your plan and to think 7 moves ahead. So imagine driving a car and you're like, where do I have to go? The drug will lay the plan out for you. It'll go, okay, you make a left here. You're going to go up to, you're on Garrett. Okay, the next street is called Garnett. Then you're going to make a left here at that immediate lot right next to the Walmart. Your gym's going to be right over here. Cut through here, go here, and then park here. You'll be able to see it like that. And the reason that you can see it like that is because what the drug does, it actually helps with that process of being able to plan. The other thing, it makes you a little bit euphoric. So this, we would call this, if you've ever heard of Stephen Kotler, he wrote the book The Rise of Superhuman or The Rise of Superman. He talks about what is called a flow state. Flow states are these states of immense focus and drive where time tends to float away. You have intense focus with no distraction. You just get lost for hours. So like when you're playing that video game and you can just play for hours on end for whatever reason, you don't really think about it, but you're just enjoying it so much that you can just progress and get all this work done. Basketball players have this. Well, the drug essentially helps with being able to get you into states like that because it downregulates what are called your fear response, or downregulates hippocampus, or sorry, not hippocampus, amygdala activity, because that's the fear to the brain. It happens to downregulate that area of the brain. So then you're more prone to take a bit more risks on the drug. So it
Oh,
helps with these three areas. So if you're someone that you're a bit fearful, you want to downregulate that response and be able to be a little bit more free, a bit more creative with what you're doing. You want to be a bit more focused. And when you're just talking to someone, you feel incredibly dialed in and present. This is a drug that's going to help you do it. If you want to meditate better, it's going to help you to be able to do that.
okay, yeah, great. Now let's talk about kind of the you talk about your like weight loss, like how did like the biohacking kind of helped in kind of weight loss, like any other than let's
You
say
said, how does the
exercise.
biohacking help with what?
Weight loss.
Okay, so the biohacking, so here's how the biohacking helps with weight loss. Biohacking helped with weight loss because I started to understand when it came to weight loss. I used to think weight loss was just simply calories in, calories out. But I started to realize there
Okay.
were other parameters inside of the body that are prerequisites for weight loss. One of those things being micronutrient deficiencies or nutrient deficiencies. If you were deficient in iodine, which controls your thyroid, which is basically like the thermostat for how much energy you're able to metabolize from fat. If that is downregulated, it's going to impair weight loss because essentially you got to think about it like a car. A car doesn't ever have issue with gaining weight. The reason a car doesn't have an issue with gaining weight is because when you get a brand new car, all of the parts are new. As time goes on, the car starts to run less and less efficiently. So equate this to make this easy. When you put $50 inside of your gas tank and you got a V4, it's going to last for however so many miles a gallon. But as
Yeah.
you drive the car more and more, as you leave it running, put the air conditioning, over time, the parts start to go bad and you have to replace the parts. But the problem is because of the way we live in the West, we don't do anything to actively replace the parts of the body to make the body metabolically efficient at being able to convert air, light, and fluid into adenosine triphosphate, ATP. This is the little battery pack that runs your iPhone. You have trillions of these things that are stuck all over alongside of your body, and they are the ones that dictate. They're the bad boys who run the show. And if they start to become inefficient at being able to use air and sunlight and food to create ATP, you're going to start to have problems. And one of those ways that it manifests in is weight gain by insulin insensitivity and lowering sensitivity to glucagon, lowering sensitivity to ghrelin, other hormones like CCK, because the body is not just calories in, calories out. The body actually has a communication pathway through in the mitochondria. They talk through what is called quorum sensing. So your endocrine system is studied with mitochondria. They sense the world around you, and through quorum, they talk to each other, and basically they communicate to other systems in the body like a power plant. Yo, let's say it's a business. Hey, marketing, we need you to do X. So they communicate, but if they're not working as efficiently as they should, the signal starts to get weaker and weaker and weaker. So when they go to communicate, the message isn't necessarily heard. So the body doesn't do what it's supposed to do in terms of
Okay.
turning food into into electrons. So there's something called a metabolic set point that you didn't, if you don't know what that is, that is going to dictate how much weight you're going to gain or lose. And that's going to be based on just your subjective genetics. It was predetermined at birth. There's another thing that we call not nutrient sensitivity, it is genetic polymorphism. Based on gene mutations, that's going to dictate what foods do or do not work for you. Certain foods that would cause inflammation, that would damage mitochondria and make the system work less efficiently, almost like putting a virus or malware on your computer. It makes it run a little slower or not as efficiently as it should. Same thing. Another thing is stress. In the West, we stress way too much. We would call this, in my coaching program, environmental kryptonite. This comes down to electromagnetic fields. This is your cell phone. This is the Wi-Fi that you use. This is the Bluetooth signaling that is inside of your car. This is the Wi-Fi when you're in a plane, when you're at the gym. This is when you keep the little cell phone in your pocket, and then the AirPods you put in your ear. All this stuff is emitting a microwave signal that essentially is disrupting the communication, the quorum sensing of the mitochondria. And it's making that again less effective. It's in triggering and leading to higher levels of inflammation. You can look at studies directly on this stuff. We got 5G, got stronger Wi-Fi. All this stuff is messing with you. Then you've got blue light. Blue light disrupts circadian rhythm and circadian timing. Circadian timing plays a role in the food that you eat and how much insulin sensitivity, what your body's response is metabolically to food based on the time of day. Because again, control of mitochondria. There are these what are called the balm genes, or these like circadian genes that have more or less expression based on what time of day that you eat. Then there's your if you do have a genetic history, genetic polymorphisms of diabetes. What'd your mother do before, during pregnancy, and then what she feeds you from the ages of like 1 to 5? Because we call this epigenetics. Imagine your genes being like a light switch, and certain lifestyle factors switch the genes on, and other lifestyle factors switch the genes off. So if you got bad genes, you want to switch the genes off and then supplement to keep those genes dormant to make sure that you don't get stuck by the curse of your genes. You make decisions, right? This is nature versus nurture. Like lifestyle is the nurture side, then you nurture yourself in order to make sure that you can get from your body what it is that you want. And these are just a couple levels of what I'm discussing and talking about. There's your hormones, there is nutrient deficiencies, there are food sensitivities, or what we would call allergies to food.
Yeah.
There is your genetic history based on your family. There is, you can look at cell aging by looking at, I believe Steve Horvath talks about, it's the methylation, DNA methylation, which talks about the age, the chronological age of your cells. And then there's also telomeres that you're able to look at as well, which talks about your subjective age, and those things are going to impact your metabolic efficiency of being able to turn air like food into ATP. And that seems like a no big deal, but these things in combination over time become problematic. So as time goes on, if you don't fix these things and make sure that they work optimally, imagine your marketing team is not working let's say they're a little lazy, they're not working as they should, and you're paying them a lot of money. That's going to impact, that's what we call an input, like a control input, like Control Alt Delete to cause a program to shut down. Let's say the marketing team isn't working as they should. That puts stress on the sales team to sell harder because they have less leads coming in, because the marketing team is not doing their job to make sure that they're marketing effectively, the campaign is
Yeah.
working, and there are more inbound leads coming to the company. So the salespeople, the CEOs or the managers put more stress on the sales team to sell more, but it's really not the fault of the sales team. It's because marketing isn't doing their job. If marketing's doing their job, the sales become easier. Why? Because it's an interrelated mechanism. It's a system. One is not interdependent of one is not independent of the other. Instead, they are interdependent of each other.
Yeah.
And if one isn't working, the partners have to pick up the slack for what this part of the organization isn't doing. Your body works exactly the same way. If one organ shuts down, it puts stress on the other organs. And then as time goes on, because this one's doing a job that it was never meant to do, this one shuts down. And guess what? Then the next organ has to take over for two organs that have shut down. Guess what? They quickly erode, and it goes cascade like a domino that falls thing, 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 after thing. And this is what we call old age.
Okay, so it's like kind of the like if like one is shut down, so the other one has a bigger workload than it should be. So it uh, kind of causing it to like kind of
Pick up the slack.
like not yeah. It's like not gonna work. It's gonna have a lot of work. Then it's gonna fall down because they had kind of extra work as well. Now,
Correct. Yeah.
like you, yeah. So you talk about that insulin. Uh,
Insulin sensitivity.
yes, yes, yeah. Can you talk more on that? Like, what what's the uh, So like, does it affect on diabetes or like something of that nature?
Correct. So with insulin sensitivity, like when you start as a kid, you have pretty good insulin sensitivity. Again, this still is dependent upon genetics, but when you're young, you usually have
Yeah.
young, fresh mitochondria.
Yeah.
What happens, how you start to develop insulin resistance is through ingestion of carbohydrate, and sorry, ingestion of high concentrations of carbohydrate. So
Okay.
in the West, we have free access to carbohydrate. Now, most people would say, like, yeah, carbohydrates are completely normal. Carbo, so you have to, there's a particular gene, I believe, called the amylase gene, and depending on that gene is going to depend on how you tolerate or metabolize carbohydrate. If you're someone that has the carbohydrates become sweet in your mouth incredibly quick, you're someone that doesn't have the genes to tolerate high consumption of carbohydrate. Now, if you were to look at our history, as look in the 1800s, look before it. If you look at, you can even go back as far as the 1800s, and this is called Banting's Guide to Weight Loss. It was commonly known in the 1800s that if you wanted to get fat, feed people a lot of bread, a lot of sugar,
Okay.
and that was the fastest way to get to make people obese. I'm not citing. Notice I didn't say fruit. I said specifically bread and sugar. Those are the fastest way to be able to get people fat.
Okay.
So what happens is that because of our consumption, especially our consumption of these foods went up in the night. I would say the tail end 1950s. The 1950s, there was a shift in our focus on foods because there was a an agriculture bill that was passed where what the nation put a lot of its resources into was giving loans or grants to farmers to subsidize monocrops. And what I mean subsidize, this is like, hey, we want you to get as big as possible. These are the crops we want you to find, to create, and to make these foods as quick as you possibly can with the cheapest way of being able to do it. So farmers, because they were being paid to do that, they did that. Instead of having an ecosystem where you've got fruits and vegetables and you've got a biodiversity of vegetables and fruits all upon the same 2 to 3 acres of land, now you have one crop being grown on 3 acres of land because that's what's selling. That's what the government is paying you for. Because of that, you start seeing greater influx of carbohydrates and sugars into the stores. Now, that doesn't seem like a big deal, but another thing that occurred as well was smaller farmers weren't able to compete. People used to go to farmers markets, used to buy from your local farmer. Then there was the production of supermarkets where you could go in because this was the boom of convenience. We got the microwave, prepackaged dinners. This is the 1950s, the tail end of World War II. So you ever heard of what MREs, meal ready to eat? Those are your Hungry Jack, your Campbell's chicken noodle soup that's in a can. That was from the tail end of World War II because we figured out to be able to package foods to send overseas to troops. We've made so much of this stuff, the GI soldiers come back, but we still have all this production of all this canned food. We got to find something to do with it. What do? We repackage it. We say, hey, you're a wife, you got kids now, your husband's back, he's got to go work. We want to make things easier for you as a mother. You know what we're going to do? We're going to take all that food and all that prep time of you having to use these crock pots and having to make a fucking meal from scratch, and we're going to go put it into this packaged food that you're going to be able to go ahead and feed your whole family with for the fraction of the time. That, oh my God, oh, it's amazing, right? Maybe for the first 50 years, not that big of a deal. But then guess what happens? As time goes on, the cost of goods, especially goods that were really expensive, because these things would have only been for the rich. Now they've made them cheap enough, right? Because the company's made enough money to now mass produce it, so that way the poorest person can what? Afford to have a fucking microwave. So
Yeah.
because now the poorest person can afford to have a microwave, you ain't got to make food anymore. You ain't got to go make a 3-course meal. You can go do all this shit directly at home and it's easy for you. You don't gotta go fucking milk a cow. Now shit's coming to you. Like, so now there's an ease and convenience for food, because before then you would have had to work all day out in the field to go in and go get your food. Now you don't have to do that anymore. So there's a lot of things that have changed in our environmental infrastructure, and because of that, our dietary patterns have changed because of the ease of access to food, and primarily carbohydrates. So it was multiple factors that shifted us. And then, so let's look at ready access to food. If you don't have to work for food, like physical exercise with heat, walking, or like just moving your body is going to make you more insulin sensitive. Your body's going to do things metabolically differently if you go and have bread after a lot of movement. But also the bread itself has changed because they've extracted a lot of the nutrients out of it, and also too, they put preservatives in it to give it longer shelf life. Those things actually, because they're not natural, the body can't break them down. It disrupts cell signaling. Quorum sensing, they disrupt that. The body, the mitochondria, like, we don't recognize what the fuck is it. We don't know what to do with this. It's kind of like if you have a program, or like you download like an exe file, but you don't have the software to be able to read it, to convert it. So what do you have to do? You have to convert it. The body doesn't have some software you can download to convert this stuff, right? Doesn't have some Windows update. So it just puts it there, right? Now you start having cells that are rogue. They're not following a line because they don't fucking know what to do with the food that you're giving it, because it's not natural in any way, shape, or form. Those things have jacked us up tremendously. Now we sit in the office. We sit for 8 hours a day, 7 days a week. Those things are impacting. We have more blue light than ever from our cell phones, from the lights that are on us, from the fluorescent lights that are above our head, all these high-powered LEDs. All those things, they increase your cortisol response. Higher cortisol response when you eat a meal, guess what happens? You have cortical receptors that are in your fat. So now when you start to eat food, you have to work out harder to make sure that you can control your insulin-genic response to a meal. Because why? You sit in front of blue light in front of your computer all day, and you're exposed to tremendous amounts of EMF. So the body has higher cortisol in eating. Guess what happens? You end up storing the majority of it. Most of us used to work outdoors in the field. We used to walk a lot. We don't get nearly as much movement, which also, again, contributes to that. Then also we have ease of access to food. So we can consume more calories, but also the calories we consume are not nutrient dense. I mean, because usually we work more, we're more stressed out, right? And then because of inflation, we go for the cheaper foods because it's what we can subjectively afford. It doesn't necessarily mean that it's good for us. We look for what's quick, what's convenient. We usually eat our lunch at our desk. When before we had more of a break, you'd be able to sit and enjoy our lunch. We can't do that now. You sit at your desk, you eat your lunch, you're stressed out, you got to keep working. You're storing most of that because you're sitting all day. And those are things, just some of the things that are affecting you. Then soil erosion and soil quality is terrible. So you're not getting the same nutrient profile from your water or the same micronutrients from the soil as well, because of what? We've gotten rid of soil diversity, and now we have monocropping. Your vegan tofu crap, your all cornfields everywhere, because what? We got to feed those cows for McDonald's. We got to feed Dyson's chickens, right? To go pump into Chick-fil-A. So our whole ecosystem is destroyed. Our whole ecosystem is like a fish. It's like we've dumped toxic sewage in the ecosystem, and then we're expecting the body to operate like it is supposed to. But the ecosystem itself has become deranged and sick. And now we have become sick as a byproduct. So that's a long-winded answer, but how it directly affects insulin sensitivity is because we have disrupted the communication pathways for insulin based on the times that we eat, based on the amount of light that we are exposed to, based on the stress that we are under while we are eating, and then because of the preservatives that we have placed in food in order to enhance its shelf life, which therefore impact how our body is able to interpret the information, the code from our food.
Okay. Now, so let's talk about let's say, you talk about the metabolic set points. Like, can you explain more on that?
So metabolic set points so your body likes to maintain tight control over homeostasis. What that means is your body doesn't like to gain too much weight or lose too much. There's a set point with which let's say your set point is 180 pounds.
Okay.
If you start trying to cut weight and drop beneath 180 pounds, your body will start to upregulate hormones like ghrelin, lower hormones like leptin, which gives you the signal, I am full, I no longer desire or need to eat. It'll downregulate your sensitivity to that. So then that way, no matter how much you eat, you'll never satisfied. It'll upregulate ghrelin. So you'll be more hungry. What happens is your body is usually by upregulating those hormones and downregulating others, it is increasing your propriety or propensity to eat so that you can come back to the weight that it desires for you to be at.
Okay. So, like, let's talk about kind of like when, like, how can biohacking help to like kind of increase your like energy to work, and like how do you kind of like
So
help
you're
it?
asking how can biohacking directly like help you with work?
Yeah, yeah.
Okay. So let's say you're someone that you want so when you say improve work, I mean there's so many ways you can improve work. One of the ways you can improve your productivity with biohacking, one of those things could be what we call elimination of environmental kryptonite. Wearing a pair of blue light blocking glasses. I believe yes, you're wearing some blue light blocking glasses as you speak right now.
Oh, yeah.
Okay. So that's a perfect example of being able to get rid of environmental toxins. By you having those blue light blocking glasses, you're actually saving electrons. So because I'm not wearing these, what's happening is that I'm losing brain energy as time goes on because of the blue light that is directly in my face. My brain is going to slowly start to just lose electrons and lose energy because these are stress signals. The blue light is a signal. It's a stress signal, and it's slowly. It's like I'm Superman. Blue light's like kryptonite. It's just slowly starting to impact me. And it's like I could save the day, but it's not as easy to save the day as I once was. Because why? I got kryptonite in the system. So by you wearing blue light blocking glasses, what you're able to do is you're blocking, you got a shield for that kryptonite. So your brain's gonna be able to have more energy for longer because you're not having it stolen away by that. That's
Yep,
number one.
yep.
Number two is getting EMF blocking EMF mat underneath your desk so that you can block EMFs. Again, we talked about cell signaling. This is going to lower inflammation response. Inflammation is a metabolic stressor. Because it's a metabolic stressor, it steals energy from you. Imagine you have a boat and the boat has holes in it. These two things poke holes in the boat. You want to plug the holes up, right? You're like, I want to have more energy. How about you plug the holes up so that way the water that there's no water that gets into the boat, no stress that gets in the boat that's going to steal energy and cause the boat to sink. Those are some easy things. Another thing that you can do if you want to be more productive at work, get a standing treadmill desk. By getting a standing treadmill desk or a stationary bike with your laptop placed on it, this is going to help you to be able to move more. And as you move more, you're going to be more productive because there's an old saying by Jim Quick, which bears true. When the body moves, the brain grooves. When you have movement, you experience greater creativity and increased productivity just through movement. Just even if you were to have a rebounder, a vibration plate underneath the desk that you can stand on, by you getting up every 20 minutes and just every 20 to 25 minutes and moving, that's going to help you. Another one is the Pomodoro technique, using short work intervals like a sprint, but you're sprinting to get a bunch of work done. And by 25 minutes, you get up, you do some movement, you stretch for 1 minute. You do that again for a second round, get up again at the end of it, stretch for 1 minute. You do this for a third round. You finish at the end of the third round and you stand up for 10 minutes and you walk. And the goal is to walk away from the devices, walk away from the devices, take your phone away. Don't keep it with you. Don't be tempted to look at it because you're going to actually enhance your stress and you're not going to allow your brain to be able to reset. When you work out, I'm pretty sure, yes, you probably know this. When you work out, right, at the end of a really hard workout, you have to recover. You got to go eat something, right? You've got to go like lay down. You got to go catch your breath. You don't go right into working after that, correct?
Yeah.
Okay. So the body works exactly the same way. You can't sprint for 45 straight fucking minutes and expect us to be cognitively switched on the end. Well, your brain can't tell the difference between sprinting, like in the gym, or working for an hour to an hour and a half straight. You have to take breaks. you'll increase your productivity more. You'll have more energy at the end of the day, and your stress levels will be lower because you're taking more active breaks. When you take your breaks, go get sunlight. If you can't get sunlight, get a red light device like a Juve panel or some small handheld red light therapy device that puts red light above you right in front of your face. It'll balance out the mitochondrial energy that you're losing from the blue light. You can put this something like this over your desk, and it's such an easy thing that you can use that's going to help to recharge you. You take a break, you go outside. You go outside, you're barefoot. As you're barefoot, you stand in the grass. You do what's called sun gazing. You look at the sun. You start to do stuff like this, you're going to have more energy consistently throughout the day. You're going to be more focused, more creative, and be able to get shit done faster. Another thing, you want to take it up another notch? Smart drugs. We mentioned one, modafinil. That's an easy one. Another one would be aniracetam or phenylpiracetam with a little bit of cognizant centralcholine. This type of stuff, aniracetam, phenylpiracetam, one's going to help with memory IO. This is being able to cram shit in your brain. And then when it's time for you to retrieve that information, it's going to help you to pull that shit out of the fucking memory piggy bank. So you'll be able to find the information that you're looking for in a fraction of the time. It also changes the actual structure of the brain. If you've got brain damage, it's been shown in stroke patients start to fix areas of the brain that have been damaged by stroke. Another thing that it's able to do, because of the phenylpiracetam, the phenyl molecule keeps the piracetam in the system longer. Because of that, it actually, in this particular one, increases energy. It was banned by WADA, which is the World Anti-Doping Agency. They banned it because they noticed athletes were more resistant to fatigue. They had greater energy and more stamina for longer while taking the drug. Now, if it works for their muscles to run, the brain's a muscle. What do you think it's going to do for your productivity run, your sprinting run as an entrepreneur? It's going to increase that, and it's going to make you more resistant to fatigue. That's another
Okay.
one you can do. There's so many ways from that. We're talking about what's called work ergonomics. I can even go into what the principle I've been teaching my clients called slope of the curve biology, which is a new principle that we use about how to be efficient with getting a metabolic signal into the system as quickly as possible to cause adaptation. And then once we've got the signal at its highest, we drop into recovery like Navy SEALs as ASAP, as quickly as possible, in order to help them to recover faster and get in a deeper state of recovery. If we can do that, they're able to be more efficient and effective and productive because they're not stressed out. We're teaching them how to be able to send a signal for stress very quickly, turn on, then turn off just as quick.
Okay. So let's say now, kind of kind of what else, kind of, let's say, now we talk about kind of work. Now, kind of like what can you do to kind of improve your like kind of longevity or health and like kind of reduce diseases? Like, let's talk about that.
So if we want to focus on longevity, if we want to focus on things like longevity or health, I mean, this is a free one. This is a free one. It's incredibly fucking easy. Fasting. Like, I'm currently on day 2 of a fast, and I do it because I increase what's called autophagy. Essentially what autophagy is, it's self-eating or self-cleaning. What the cells do is, as I'm not eating, my body has a chance to now clean up damaged cells. It has a chance to make me better sensitive to insulin. It's able to lower inflammation because, again, what is it doing? It's cleaning up damaged cells that have been created or misfolded protein. And what it goes through the system and it starts to clean cells that aren't functioning as efficiently as they should. And as it does, it gets rid of the weak and inefficient. It grows new cells, right? Or it grows new mitochondria. It gets rid of the weak and inefficient ones, and it makes the ones that are not that weak, it makes them toughen up to make them stronger. The process of this is what we call hermetic stress or hormesis. By inducing a slight amount of stress, the body has to metabolically adapt. Remember, it's all about signal. Fasting is a metabolic signal to tell the body we need to get stronger and toughen up. We need to become more resilient. So it starts to go through and clean and get rid of it. Basically, think about Eric Ries, the Eric Ries, the lean startup. It starts to fire all the employees that aren't doing their job. Hey, you know what? You've been sitting on your ass for a fucking while. Hey, here's your 2 weeks notice and your severance pay. You're out. The body's doing the same thing, going through self-regulation, self-cleaning. That's an easy one for you. Another one, if you're talking about longevity, there's things like metformin, which is one. You've got what's called rapamycin, which is another one for longevity. You've got spermidine, which is another one for longevity. You can do stem cell injections, and you can do full body stem cell injections. That's going to be the stuff that's going to help you with longevity. Another one for longevity, I would say, is getting rid of trauma. So doing something like 40 years of Zen, which would be like a really expensive neural feedback tool, but because getting rid of trauma causes you to not to react to stress or react to trauma or signals that would make your trauma to react again. And by doing that type of stuff, that's going to make you be more relaxed. So if you've ever been in a situation and you can't understand why you got angry, why you got frustrated, why you became mean or snappy with somebody, it's usually because of trauma. I was sitting before the call, I had a bunch of stuff happen. I was trying to pick some things up, and a bunch of stuff was going wrong. And as it was going wrong, I was breathing and just remaining calm because I had a conversation about an old lady, and she was like, "Yeah, there's really nothing you can do. You just learn to relax." And I was just learning to relax and chill. And there was a guy, like the fourth guy behind the woman, that was chill and being like, "Hey, I understand stuff's happening in your car. It's not a big of a deal." The guy was like, "Hey, man, need to hurry up. Need to go." And I'm in my head, I'm going, "He's stressed out. He's stressed out because he's in a rush." And when I look at him, he's wearing a trucker hat. I can tell he works in construction. He's fat, he's overweight. And the first thing I think in my head, I go, he's got trauma. His biology doesn't work properly. He doesn't have the same money or the time issue because he doesn't work for himself. I can't be mad at a guy like that for feeling like he's in a rush. He's probably got a family of 5. He's Hispanic. He's probably got a family of 5 to feed. What do I know? I don't have any family. I work for myself. I make a ton of money. I love my business and what I do. I'm blessed to be able to sit here and to do this. And I've spent years and hundreds of thousands of dollars to upgrade my biology and work on my trauma. I don't have to react to that. I can just say, hey, it's not that big of a deal. I can just come back because I live down the street anyways. It's okay. But for him, we gotta go, man. That's trauma. That's that irritation. Why he can't have self-control and be calm and go, oh, I'll get home when I get home, is because of trauma and because of he's mentally fatigued. It's probably what 4:45. Probably got off work like 3. Had to drive here, go deal with a bunch of fucking San Diego traffic and shit, get into this fucking store, right? Try to find what he's looking for. His brain don't work well. He's probably like making mistakes, doesn't, gets lost, makes mistakes, doesn't pick up what needs to pick up, and it takes longer and longer and longer for him to pick his stuff. So by the time he gets to the line, he sees me, and I'm just kind of chilling there, and I'm having a good time. I'm not really worried. Of course, it's gonna piss this guy off because he's already fucked off. He's had a rough day. He's had to work 12 fucking hours making minuscule pay. Inflation's fucking high. He can't do anything to make any more money. Come on. That stuff is stressing him out, which is causing him to age faster, right? He's probably eating multiple meals a day. You combine all that shit together, it doesn't help with longevity in any way.
Can you give me 1 minute? Yeah. All right, then. So yeah, we are talking about the for health and longevity. And now, can you talk more about kind of like how to like deal with trauma and like kind of on that kind of path, like how can you kind of deal with it, or like how can you like
Are you asking, like, you want to understand how trauma works? Or are you asking what ways or formulaic ways I would use of getting over trauma?
yeah like
Okay.
like how to
So some of the ways that I've experimented with when it comes to overcoming trauma, one of those things being psilocybin.
okay.
Psilocybin, it was one of the first drugs, I believe Dr. Stan Groff was one of the first people to start experimenting with psilocybin. He was using psilocybin in clinical therapy for helping people to overcome trauma. That's one. Holotropic breathing is another one. So doing Wim Hof breathing for 5, 6, 7, 8 rounds, so doing it for somewhere around an hour, will help you to be able to get into very deep brain states, which help you to overcome trauma. Another one is called EMDR. That's another one. You've got neural feedback, which is another one you can use for overcoming trauma. You have ayahuasca, which is another one. You can use LSD is another one for overcoming trauma. You've got ketamine therapy, which is another one that you can use for overcoming trauma. It really just depends if you have an HMO plan, which one your insurance is going to subjectively cover to be able to have access to these types of therapies. But these are things that help you to hack therapy faster. Like therapy just tells you what you're going through. It tells you what your triggers are, but it doesn't really tell you how to overcome them. You can go to what's called cognitive behavior therapy, which gives you tools
Okay.
to remediate or mitigate the trauma with by essentially building habits. But the problem is that you actually have to change the structure of the brain itself and then change the neurological associations that one has to the trauma. So let's say you were raped as a child. You need to change the feeling and the story you're telling yourself surrounding the rape. If we don't do that, every single time something comes up that reminds you of rape, your brainstem is going to recognize it and it's going to go pattern match threat. And your body is going to respond in milliseconds before your conscious mind is ever consciously aware. If you don't get on top of your trauma, it will run the show 90% of the time and it'll allow you to think that you are in control of making conscious decisions. So imagine you have this goal you want to hit. If you have things that are self sabotaging you, that are underneath your conscious control and you can't get control of them, it will be running the show. And when you go achieve a goal, it will cause you to self sabotage and start to slowly veer you off the course that you were aiming to get to. So imagine you have a ship and you got a map and you have a disobedient crew member that every single time you turn your back, what he does is he just starts to slowly turn the wheel and veer you off the course. And then you wonder why, fuck, I didn't get to America like I was supposed to, even though that was my intention. Your trauma is that disobedient crew member. You need to get on top of that. And it's a huge thing for people. So I've given you so many modalities at this point of things that you can do for that. And a lot of this stuff is pretty significantly inexpensive to go do.
Okay, great. So, like, we are coming to kind of tail end of the podcast now as well. So, for like one of the last question is like, how do you kind of deal with insulin resistance? Like if it comes up like in your
You said, I'm sorry, you said something about assistance. I didn't really catch that. I'm sorry.
yeah, I'm talking about insulin resistance and like how can you deal with it? Like
Oh,
how?
so if you're trying to mitigate insulin resistance, so one of the ways you can mitigate insulin resistance is this: weight training. Weight training is going to help you to mitigate insulin resistance. Like particularly strength training. Strength training, high intensity interval training in the form of like Tabata sprints is another great one. Another one that's going to help with mitigation of insulin resistance is going to be berberine, Ceylon cinnamon, apple cider vinegar. You've got bitter melon extract, rock lotus extract, and there's one called gynemia, which is another one for controlling this. Basically, it controls your blood sugar response to carbohydrates, but also just to regular food in general. These are the things moving consistently throughout the day, like actively every 20 minutes, getting up and moving, and that stuff's going to help with mitigation of insulin resistance. Sleeping, oh my lord, sleep is huge. If we're talking about like the biggest bang for your buck in terms of one of the biggest and most underutilized biohacks, it's sleep, dude. Getting really good high quality sleep is crucial for increasing your performance and every single you want to be smarter, you want to recall or remember more. You want to have a brain that works incredibly well. You want to have better insulin control and less cravings. Sleep. And what I mean by sleep is, I mean, it's not about the amount of hours you sleep, it's about the quality of the sleep. That is huge. Get a tracker, like an Oura ring, that tracks the different phases of sleep and tells you what you're doing wrong. Most people, they don't realize this. They eat too late. There was a new study that came out that was talking about it was three test groups and there was three test groups. One was able to eat as many calories as they wanted, didn't really matter. I think it was 3,000 calories ad lib. Another test group, same calorie, same caloric intake, but they had it between the hours of midday. So I believe this was from 2 to 8 or 12 to 8, I believe. And there was one group that their calories they only were able to have them between the hours of 8 to 2 p.m., 8 a.m. to 2 p.m. And what they found was that there was no real differences in weight loss, or there was no like weight loss in the first two groups. So eating from 12 or 2 p.m. to 8, no differences really in weight loss. The same with the group that had 3,000 calories. The third group, better insulin sensitivity, they lost more weight, I believe, in 5 pounds. And the study was only five. It was 5 days. It was short. And the other thing was they had what's called a greater expression in diurnal clock genes or circadian clock genes. So the people slept better. I tried it. I said, let me just try this. Let me see if this is a huge deal. I noticed I stopped getting low sleep scores. My sleep scores regularly are perfect. They're optimal every night. I started looking at Brian Johnson. He's he's a guy who spent about 2.5 million on biohacking and
Yeah, yeah,
biohacking his body and reversing his age chronologically by 5 years. He stopped eating 10 hours before bed, had perfect sleep scores for a month. Guess what? I said, let me try it. Guess what? My sleep scores improved by going to bed hungry, by not eating 8 to 10 hours before bed. Guess what? My sleep was amazing. My deep sleep went, I was like, holy fuck. If I just stop putting food in my mouth before 2 o'clock. Now I do it as early as 11 or 12 p.m. So the afternoon, sleep better, better weight loss, better cognitive control. Everything is a heck of a lot better energy levels because my sleep is efficient.
yeah. So it's Jay Mac. It's great to have you back here. So we'll thank you for coming for today. So we'll like keep in touch and we'll see you around and we'll see how this
Mm-hmm.
goes.
Say it again, brother. I'm sorry, I didn't catch that. I'm sorry.
Yeah, yeah. So it's like great to have you back. So we'll kind of wind up the podcast now and we'll see you around.
Well, again, thank you again for having me, man. I really appreciate it. I hope this was incredibly valuable for you. I didn't go into
Yeah,
like
yeah,
everything that I think we were going to go through, but I think this was solid enough for a really solid episode for people.
yeah, yeah, yeah. So that's great. So we end the broadcast.